So if you don't know what Linux is an open source operating system with a vast amount of distributions or versions, that being Linux Mint, Ubuntu Linux, Kali Linux, which is shown in Mr. Robot heavily because it's actually awesome, to the very top tier of Linux being Manjaro, Black Arch Linux, and Arch Linux. My bad. The main thing about Linux is it's fully customizable to anyone's extent as long as you have the time and the knowledge to do so. And even if you don't have the knowledge, then just asking someone to do it for you or just looking up a tutorial is nothing new. If you wanted to have something from, I don't know, r/unixporn, which is an actual Reddit, it's actually incredible, I recommend you look at it, then go there, look up what they use, because sometimes they will say so, and customize it exactly to look like theirs, but with a few tweaks if you like. I'll show you a few examples, which I think are pretty incredible. Now, the best part about Linux is that it's fully customizable, but it's also fully open source. So that means that security vulnerabilities are usually caught before anything actually breaks out. And if you have a purely secure, fully secure version of Linux, or as it is right now, you can stick with that version before you do anything like update it. Unlike Windows, which forces you to update even though you ask it not to. A problem I feel like all of us have come across. Now, in terms of switching from Mac OS to Linux, personally speaking, I actually don't see that that's an actual thing to do, considering Mac OS, in my opinion, is more custom to general users as it's very supported and it's actually running off of the same base system, Unix, hence the Reddit name unixporn. Please excuse me, YouTube. I know you're sensitive about that stuff. The main reason I think you should switch to Linux is because it has great security and maximum customization. From, I don't know, whatever you want to do, like office work, you can customize it to where anytime you open up your computer, you get an animation of a cat playing just because you opened it. Or anytime you submit a file through the terminal, which is awesome, you can have it just blow fireworks or poppers or whatever in your desktop, which isn't necessary, but still, it's fun to do. And the fact that you get to use the terminal in a very demanding way is actually pretty badass. If you want to switch to Linux legitimately, I definitely recommend it. There's no actual reason for it, as Windows is getting better with security, but since Windows is one of the most used operating systems, it's also the most targeted for security, like malware and viruses. And I don't know, 2021 was great for ransomware, whenever multiple people were using Windows, not really blaming Windows, but mostly outdated versions of Windows that had major security flaws, and even certain times Linux will have security flaws, but since it's open source, it will be cut before most people will actually have a chance to take advantage of it. There are many different Linux distributions, basing off of the base distribution being Arch and Debian as the most popular. There are many different Arch distributions such as Manjaro, Arch, and Black Arch, as well as many different Debian-based distributions such as Debian, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, and the famous from Mr. Robot, Kali Linux. Now, in order to choose a Linux distribution, personally speaking, I say go with a Debian-based distribution. They are the most user-friendly in terms of beginner users, and if you don't know what you're doing, there are more tutorials for it. I've looked. Also, it's easiest to set up rather than going with Arch, because Arch is completely terminal-based and you get almost no help with it unless you Google every single step or just use the installation guide, which honestly can be frustrating, very frustrating. Like, I couldn't even install Wi-Fi on that thing. Frustrating. It was annoying. I switched back to Ubuntu because of it. Now, what do you need to actually install Linux? Personally speaking, I say you should test it, but this is also working for testing and installing. I have two methods. One is a virtual machine method, and one is a live boot method. First, we'll start with the virtual machine method, as it does not mess with your system entirely. it only just makes a virtual machine, which is adding another machine inside of your current running machine. May that be an Apple laptop, a Windows machine, or an already Linux machine, but you just wanted to switch it up a bit. And the live boot option I'm providing, I will do for Linux Mint and Ubuntu Linux, and there's really no reason for me to do Kali Linux, as this is just to be in general use. So if you're looking for that, I'm sorry, this is the wrong video. Now, for a virtual machine, you'll need to download what I'm using, VirtualBox, to set it up, and hopefully you have enough processing power, RAM, and storage space to do so. And I will leave all of those arguments right here. Now, if you're using a live boot method, you will need at least an 8 gigabyte USB drive and a laptop that works completely, hopefully, and just some free time, as well as a software known as Blina Etcher. If you just type in Etcher and this is the page that you see, you found the right place. And I will leave all of those here. Pause it right now just to kind of figure out if you have this. Now, before I actually get on with the tutorial of how to do these, this isn't supposed to be a exactly what is how to tutorial. It's mostly supposed to be a starter's guide to what I wish I would have seen whenever I was searching this stuff up and starting to use this. So that's the reason why I'm running through all of this so quickly, and also that's the reason why I am actually making this one, because I had to search many different tutorials just to get to my current state. I'm only a beginner, probably like you will be after the end of this video, but hopefully I will give you enough knowledge in terms of the basics to get you to a good place of how do I do this, because it's so exciting. So in terms of the software that you're going to need, you'll need VirtualBox, which is linked in the description below for the software page, and as well as the ISO files for the Linux distributions I'm going to be showing you. Once you've redirected yourself to the VirtualBox page, you should see this. Click on the download button, and then if you look here, you'll see that there's a Windows host and a OS X host. Windows host being Windows as your main operating system, and OS X as macOS being your main operating system. Once you've downloaded these for your dedicated system, then you should also go to the Ubuntu or Linux Mint homepage, whichever one you'd like to do first, to download the LTS version of these distributions. LTS is known as the long-term support version, and will be the most recent and most up-to-date in terms of everything that you need. I've already downloaded it, so I'm just going to go straight to the next one, which is Linux Mint. After you hit the download button here, you should choose a version. I'm using the Cinnamon edition, as I just think it looks the best, and then you'll need to redirect yourself to the bottom of the page to go to your selected region and hit the download that you think that you need for your country. After you've downloaded your ISO files and VirtualBox, you should be able to go to your VirtualBox software here, and then we can get started on making a virtual machine of these two software distributions. Now, to make a new virtual machine of these distributions, all you have to do is go to New, choose a name for this distribution. For me, it will be Ubuntu. And as you can see, certain distributions will automatically have their characters filled out for them to work in an optimized method for this virtual machine. So the machine type will be Linux, and the version is Ubuntu 64-bit, as I do have the 64-bit version of Ubuntu. If you have a 32-bit machine, then go with Ubuntu 32-bit, but otherwise this will be fine. Hit next, and I will give my system 2 gigabytes of RAM, which is 2000 megabytes, and I will keep it as a virtual hard disk just because that's the easiest to manage, and do a virtual hard disk again as the hard disk file type so the machine knows what kind of drive it has. I will keep this on a dynamically allocated size, as I'm only going to give it 10 gigabytes of storage initially, but since it's dynamically allocated, then that means that if it needs more space, it'll take more space as it is necessary. I'm going to change my file directory to my secondary hard drive, but whatever works for you is best for you then. Like I said, I'm only going to give this 10 gigabytes of memory. Give it however much you think you need or how much you can spare, and then create the virtual machine. From here, we're not going to launch it yet, but we will go over to the settings icon and go to the system preferences. Once you're there, go to the processor, and however many cores do you think your machine will need, I say a minimum of 2 to 4, depends on exactly what kind of processor you have in your machine, then just give it about a quarter of that. I have a 12-core CPU, as you can see here. As long as you're within the green of how many cores you're giving your processor for your virtual machine, you should be fine. Hit OK, and then start the virtual machine. Before we do that, I will show you how to set up the Linux Mint version, as it should be the same, but just in case, I will show you how anyways. Now, Linux Mint is an automatic version of Ubuntu Linux, so it will go through the same process. Select the Linux type and Ubuntu Linux 64-bit version, as like I said before, that's the version I'm running. Next. 2 gigabytes of RAM, make a virtual hard disk, tell it that it has a virtual hard disk, make it dynamically allocated, and give it 10 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm going to change my storage location just as it's easier for me to keep up with. Create, go to the settings, system, processor, 4 cores. Okay, now after this you just need to start the virtual machines and mount the drives in the virtual machines. All you have to do is mount the drives is direct it to the place that you stored those files and then load it up. I'm going to start my Ubuntu virtual machine first. And as you can see here, it says that there's no current ISO image because it is empty. I'm going to go here, add, and as you can see, I have a lot of different Linux distributions here, but I'm going to go to Ubuntu. You probably won't have all these, but I made a dedicated folder for all of my Linux distributions. I'm going to open this, choose, and start the process. I'm going to go full screen so it's going to be easier for you to see. It will go through this process to find all of the files needed for this virtual machine to run, so just let it go through this and don't do anything in order to stop it. Okay, as soon as you see this page from your virtual machine, then you're just going to have to install Ubuntu and then start the installation process. This will be the same for the live boot method, but this will be easiest as it's just to test it to see if you'd like to do this. So hit install, hit continue for your selected language and keyboard layout. And from here, this is up to you. You can do a normal installation which will have default games, applications, and other things like LibreOffice, which is basically Microsoft Office but more open source and compatible with Ubuntu and Linux distributions, or the minimal installation, which will only have basic tools such as a web browser, a way to interact with your hard drive, and stuff like that. I'm going to allow it to install any updates, as I might not have fully updated this or downloaded the most recent version, so it'll be easiest to update it from there. Now, for this, you will need to erase and install Ubuntu. As long as you're not doing this on a bare metal machine, this will be completely fine. This is only a virtual machine, so this is normal if you need to do it on a brand new virtual machine. Going to install now. And because this is actually hard to see, I will go ahead and adjust the window size as soon as this is done installing. So I'm also going to hit continue to change any disk settings, and I will show you how to change the window size as soon as we're done. My current time zone is New York, so I'm going to hit that and continue. And then I'm going to start up with the user profiles and just type in a few basic things. So I'm going to do user, user. It'll automatically hit input the computer name and the username. I'm also going to do a password. I'm just doing 1, 2, 3 for this test, and hit continue. Do not do 1, 2, 3 as a password, even though I don't think I need to say this, but certain passwords are definitely needed to be known, not to use as a password, like password, for some reason. Okay, so as soon as your installation is complete, mine took a long time, you just need to restart the virtual machine and then continue as normal. Now, as you can see, I have the user profile here. I can type in the password, and it's set up like a normal operating system. Now, the first thing I will do is skip all of the sign-ins because I don't need that to be necessary. I will go ahead and hit next. I'm not going to send any system information, as this is a virtual machine and it doesn't need that. Next. No location services, and I'm done. Now to readjust the size, just go to settings, display, and resolution. Change it to whatever you need it to be. I have a 16 by 10 display, not a 16 by 9 display, so this might vary for you. And I'm going to go ahead and do 1280 by 960. Right, 1280 by 800, as I think that's currently the best resolution for this page. There we go. Keep changes, and there you go. You are now on a virtual machine of Ubuntu that you can test and break to your heart's content. To set up the Linux Mint virtual machine, go ahead and load Linux Mint. I'm going to full screen this so it's easier to see. Right. I'm going to load Linux Mint. Here, open, choose, and start. Now I'm going to full screen this so it'll be easier for you to see. Close this, and this is the splash page, which will bring you to the bootloader. All you have to do is just start Linux Mint, and it should start loading it, as you can see. Now, I am not completely familiar with Linux Mint, but it is basically the same feel as Windows, with the same utilization as Ubuntu. So if you're switching from one to the other, it should be about the same thing. And as you can see, everything is done except for the installation. I'm going to go ahead and install Linux Mint just to show you the process. And we can start. I'm going to go ahead and press English as my language and continue. English US as the keyboard layout. And as you can see here, I forgot that Linux Mint does require a larger capacity for installation, but just following the prompts should get you to a working Linux Mint virtual environment. So I'm going to quit this process. Quit. But other than the installation process being a little bit messed up on my part, as you can see, this is a fully functioning-ish Linux virtual machine, and it looks and feels a bit like Windows, so this should be a very good substitution for any office work. These are the default programs that are on here, and for now I will switch back to Ubuntu to show how to install any recommended programs I think that you might want. Okay, so back in the Ubuntu virtual machine, I will show you how to install some basic applications I think you might like, as well as some basic applications I personally use on a daily or semi-daily basis. For starters, I'm going to need to locate the terminal by pressing the icon in the bottom left. And as you can see, the terminal icon is right here, but if you cannot find it on yours, just type in terminal and load it here. Now, I will show you how to install basic applications to actually help you use the terminal a bit better, in my opinion, to help you watch media, to install a task managing program called HTOP, and a few other things. But for the main part, every program that you need will be located in this software store. Okay, the software store is very slow to load, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what to do in order to install. Oh, there it is. Perfect timing. Okay. Okay, so this is reminding me of an update, so I will not do that currently with this, but I will go through the terminal to update it, as it is much cooler in my opinion. So to install any updates, all you have to do is type in sudo apt update. Sudo, which is the super user command, apt, which is the package installer, and update to update the system. Now I'm going to actually install those updates by typing in sudo apt upgrade. Yes to continue, and everything is currently upgrading to the latest version. Okay, now that the update is complete, which took a long time to do, I will go ahead and clear the terminal by typing in clear and hitting enter, and then I will start installing a few applications I think are necessary for any use. So first I will install Tilix by using the command sudo apt install, enter the application name, which in this case is Tilix, T-I-L-I-X, which is just something that'll help me navigate the terminal a bit better, because I can add more terminals to it, and I have so many applications open. Hit Y to continue, and it's installing. So while that's currently installing, I will go ahead and start a new terminal and install an application that takes a snapshot of my system so I can save it as soon as I need to. So I'm going to type in sudo apt install, and then the name of this application is Timeshift, Timeshift. Hit enter, add in my password, 1, 2, 3, 4, enter, and it's installing. Now I'm going to go back here to the Tilix installation, and it should be done. I'm going to close this terminal by typing exit, and close this terminal as well by typing exit. Now, everything that I've done was installed technically through the store, but this is just cooler in my opinion. And if you go here to the applications menu, then you'll see that Timeshift was installed properly, and Tilix was also installed properly, but it's only in the utilities folder. I'm going to go ahead and select Tilix, and here it is. With this application, I can make as many terminal windows as I'd like or need to, and it's just a lot easier and more visually appealing in my opinion. From there, to install any application that you might need, such as Spotify, all you have to do is go to the software store and install it as necessary. This virtual machine is running pretty slow, so everything will take a while, but as you can see, it's just a normal software store like you would have on your phone or anything else. All you have to do is click install, and then it'll install and work as well as the desktop version because it is the desktop version. Now, this I have to restart because I did update it, so I'm not going to install it yet, but just go through here and install any application that you think you might need. But here are a few on the screen that you might want to install. This is the exact same for the live boot method of installation of applications, so everything will be fine. Now I'm going to close this virtual machine and show you how to set up the live boot method. Now for the live boot method, you will need this program called Balena Etcher. All you have to do is come here, download it for your designated operating system, whether that be macOS or Windows. I already have it for Windows 64-bit version because that's what I'm running, and then that's it. Now, after the application is fully installed, you'll see this page as soon as you launch the application, which is to flash it to a USB drive. Now, any USB drive around 8 gigabytes should work perfectly fine, or any USB drive around 8 to 16 gigabytes will be fine. So I've just plugged in a 500 megabyte drive by mistake, but this will work too, just for the demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and flash it from the file, and then pick whichever installation I'd like. For me, I will do Ubuntu just for this. Open, select the target drive, which should be this, but it's actually too small and shouldn't be used for this. So ideally you would use this, but I'm not going to for this demonstration as it's too small. Select the target drive, and then as soon as you can, flash the operating system and let it process. Now for the live boot method, all I'm doing right now is just turning it on, making sure it works, and making sure it boots into the current Windows 8 operating system. As you and I can both see, this is working perfectly fine by booting straight into the Windows 8 operating system. Now all I'm doing is shutting down the laptop to set the laptop to boot off of the USB drive instead of the internal hard drive. As you actually cannot see, I cut the frame off a bit too short, and I'm currently trying to boot off of the USB. It's working, and the first option is to boot into Ubuntu. This is technically the live version of Ubuntu, but there's no official live version, so it's kind of debatable. This laptop is very old, so it will take a while to boot into Ubuntu, so let's just speed through that. So now that the laptop's finally booted into Ubuntu, we can finally play around with it and see if we actually wanted to use it for this device and properly install it. I'm not going to show the installation method as I've already done that on the virtual machine method, but all you have to do is press install. But before you do that, I suggest you take out the USB drive, boot back to your normal operating system, and then take off all your personal files before you actually do so. Now, in order to test your Linux distributions, you will need to use either a virtual machine or a live boot method, which I've done previously. So go to that point right now because I have not done that tutorial yet. Still waiting to record. But if you've used the virtual machine method, then just go ahead and use the live boot method to actually install it on an actual machine, and it works the same way. I only added the virtual machine method as an option so you can test the distribution just to see if that's actually what you wanted to use. You could use any distribution. I'm only using Linux Mint and Ubuntu Linux because it is a good basic explanation, and usually they are the most popular. So yeah. Now, if you set up Linux through the virtual machine method, then go ahead, play with it as it is currently, and if you decide to actually install it, go ahead, use the live boot method to actually install it and press the installation button as well. Now, if you've tested it through the live boot method and you have not clicked the installation button, then personally speaking, just carry the USB around with you and boot off of any device that you currently have, and if you like, just switch to it. There's no actual reason to use the live boot method for every single device you have, as it will not save any files because I am not teaching you how to boot off of this device with a partition size, meaning it will not save any of the settings or anything. If you'd actually like to switch to a Linux distribution for your laptop or desktop, I suggest you take another USB drive to save your personal files, or you upload them to a cloud service. I almost forgot about that part last time, and install it and install the Linux distribution that you chose as we did before, but pressing the installation button. Once you've done that, all you have to do is run through the setup again. Don't worry, it wasn't too hard unless you have a slow device, but this is just for testing purposes, so you're good. And once you've installed it, I suggest you use it for a whole week, and then you can go ahead and, I don't know, actually choose whether or not to switch. So I'm currently filming this outro before I do the actual tutorial, but ideally everything will have worked out as it should have, and you are currently running or testing Linux to your desire. Now, I only showed you how to install basic applications that I say are necessities for using Linux, as it is the easiest way to do stuff. If there are other applications that you'd like to install while using Linux, I suggest you Google it, look up forums or tutorials, or leave it in the comments so I can actually show you how to do it if you prefer me to do so. I definitely say that there are more people that are more experienced in Linux and computer science in general to teach you, so I will leave them all in the comments and on the screen. These are all very good content creators I suggest you watch. Even if you might not like their filming style like I've done, I still suggest that you at least watch their videos because they have great Linux content. And don't worry, I will not be showing you major cybersecurity stuff, as most of these content creators definitely do. If I have not mentioned so before, the reason why I'm making this video is so that other people like me who would like to start using Linux with basic operations and basic systems can look at a video and have everything that they need laid out all in one step without having to go through 20 tutorials just to find out one thing and not even be sure if they still did the right thing. My camera is currently dying, so this is the end for the outro. So I guess this is goodbye. I will leave more content creators in the description below that I think will do a much better job of how to install and use Linux than me, and most of them are cybersecurity, so be wary of that.